My wife ignored me completely at her best friend's wedding. Not just a little distracted or busy socializing. I'm talking about the kind of cold shoulder you'd give a stranger who stepped on your shoes. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming, not even me. The bride herself looked me dead in the eye during the ceremony and whispered loud enough for half the front row to hear, "I wish I had married someone like you instead." Let me paint you the picture of how this disaster unfolded. We arrived at the church 30 minutes early because my wife insisted on being there to help with last-minute preparations. Fair enough, I thought. Supporting friends is what couples do. What I didn't expect was to become completely invisible the moment we walked through those doors. She immediately rushed to the bridal party without so much as a "see you later" or "find us a good seat." I stood there holding her purse, her jacket, and apparently my dignity while she disappeared into the chaos of wedding preparations. When other guests started arriving and asking where she was, I had to explain that my own wife had vanished into thin air. The ceremony itself was beautiful, or would have been if I wasn't sitting alone in the third row like some random +1. My wife was up front with the bridal party, but every time I caught her eye, she'd look right through me like I was part of the church architecture. During the processional, when the bride walked down the aisle, she actually made eye contact with me and smiled. A real, genuine smile that lasted several seconds longer than the polite one she was giving everyone else. But the moment that really got my attention happened during the vows. The groom was stumbling through his speech, clearly nervous and forgetting half his words. The bride looked frustrated, her smile becoming more forced by the second. That's when she glanced over at me again, shook her head slightly, and mouthed something that made the older woman next to me gasp audibly. I wish I had married him instead. The words hit the front section like a small earthquake. Several heads turned to look at me, including my wife's, who finally acknowledged my existence, but only to shoot me a look that could melt steel. The bride's mother covered her mouth in shock, while the groom's family seemed blissfully unaware that their son had just been publicly dismissed at his own wedding. After the ceremony, during the photo session, my wife continued her performance of treating me like hired help. "Hold this," she'd say, shoving her bouquet at me. "Move over there," pointing to some corner where I wouldn't be in any pictures. When the photographer asked for a shot of all the couples, she actually walked away from me and stood next to her cousin's husband instead. That's when the bride approached me directly, right in front of everyone. "You know," she said loud enough for the entire wedding party to hear, "you're probably the only man here who knows how to treat a woman with respect." She looked pointedly at my wife, then back at me. Some people don't realize what they have until it's gone. My wife's face went from pale to red in about 3 seconds. She marched over, grabbed my arm with enough force to leave marks, and hissed, "What did you say to her?" I looked at her calmly and replied, "Nothing she didn't already know." The simplicity of that response seemed to hit harder than any argument could have, because deep down, she knew exactly what the bride meant, and she knew it was true. The reception was about to begin, and I could see my wife's panic starting to set in. The bride had just publicly praised me while subtly criticizing her behavior, and everyone had witnessed it. But instead of reflecting on her actions, or maybe apologizing, she doubled down. As we walked toward the reception hall, she turned to me and said, "You better not embarrass me tonight." I stopped walking and looked at her directly. "Embarrass you? That ship sailed about 4 hours ago when you decided to pretend I didn't exist." The wedding guests flowing around us started to slow down, sensing drama. The only difference is, now I'm done pretending it doesn't bother me. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "You're being ridiculous. It's her special day, not yours." "You're right," I said, straightening my tie. "It is her special day, and she's already made it clear who she thinks deserves respect and who doesn't." I gestured toward the reception hall. "After you. Let's see how the rest of this plays out." As we entered the reception, I could feel the energy shift. The bride was watching us from the head table, her new husband oblivious to the undercurrent of tension that was about to turn his wedding reception into something none of us would ever forget. My wife had spent the entire day disrespecting me in public, thinking there would be no consequences. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The reception hall buzzed with celebration, but I could feel the undercurrent of tension from our earlier exchange. My wife immediately gravitated toward the open bar, leaving me to find our assigned seats alone. Again, I was starting to see a pattern here, and frankly, I was getting tired of being treated like an afterthought at every social gathering. Our table was near the dance floor, which gave me a perfect view of the head table where the bride kept glancing in our direction. The groom was busy talking to his groomsmen, completely unaware that his new wife had just declared she'd rather be married to a guest than to him. I had to admire her timing, if nothing else. My wife returned with 2 drinks, sliding one across the table to me without making eye contact. "Try to look like you're having fun," she muttered, already scanning the room for more interesting company than her own husband. "I'll do my best to contain my enthusiasm," I replied, taking a sip. "Though it's hard to have fun when your own wife acts like you're carrying some contagious disease." She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. I'm just socializing." Before I could respond, the best man approached our table. Tall, athletic, and clearly aware of his own appeal. He flashed a smile at my wife that lasted about 3 seconds too long. "Mind if I steal your beautiful wife for a dance?" My wife practically jumped out of her chair. "I'd love to." She didn't even look at me for permission or acknowledgement, just abandoned our table like it was on fire. I watched them on the dance floor, noting how she threw her head back laughing at whatever he was saying. The same woman who hadn't smiled at me once all day was now acting like a teenager at prom. Other guests at our table started exchanging uncomfortable glances. The elderly couple beside me leaned over. "Is everything all right, dear?" the woman asked gently. "Everything's perfect," I said with a smile. "My wife's just demonstrating her interpretation of marriage vows. You know, the part about loving, honoring, and cherishing." I gestured toward the dance floor where she was now practically pressed against the best man. Very modern approach. When the song ended, they didn't return to the table. Instead, they moved to the bar, where my wife ordered another drink and continued her animated conversation. The best man's hand found its way to the small of her back, and she made no effort to move away. That's when I decided I'd seen enough. I walked over to where they were standing, positioning myself directly between them. "Having fun?" I asked my wife, keeping my tone conversational. She startled slightly, clearly not expecting me to interrupt her flirtation session. "We were just talking," she said defensively. "Talking," I repeated, nodding slowly. "Is that what they're calling it now?" I turned to the best man. "Thanks for keeping my wife company. I'll take it from here." The best man looked between us, suddenly uncomfortable. "No problem, man. Just being friendly." "Oh, I could see exactly how friendly you were being," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "But she's married, in case you missed the ring." I gestured to her wedding band. Though I understand the confusion, given how she's been acting. My wife's face flushed with anger. "You're embarrassing yourself," she hissed. "Am I?" I asked loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who's been embarrassing our marriage all day." I looked around at the faces now watching our exchange. "But please, don't let me interrupt your performance." She grabbed my arm and tried to pull me away from the crowd, but I didn't budge. "What's wrong with you?" she demanded. "What's wrong with me?" I laughed, and it came out harder than I intended. "That's rich. I'm not the one who's been treating their spouse like a stranger since we walked in here." I looked directly at her. "But you want to know what's really wrong? I'm done pretending this is normal." The best man cleared his throat. "Maybe I should go." "Good idea," I said without taking my eyes off my wife. This conversation is about to get very honest. My wife's anger flared. "You're being insecure and pathetic," she said, loud enough for half the reception to hear. "I can't even talk to people without you acting like a jealous child." The words hung in the air like smoke. Several conversations around us stopped. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but my voice remained steady. "Insecure and pathetic," I repeated slowly. Those are interesting words coming from someone who's been throwing herself at every man here except her own husband. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I continued, my voice carrying further than I'd intended. "You want to call me pathetic? Let's talk about what's actually pathetic. Pathetic is ignoring your spouse for an entire wedding. Pathetic is flirting with other men while your husband sits alone. Pathetic is treating your marriage like it's some inconvenient obligation." The bride appeared beside us suddenly, her face flushed with anger, but not at me. "What's going on here?" she demanded, looking directly at my wife. My wife straightened up, trying to regain her composure. "Nothing, just a misunderstanding." The bride's eyes narrowed. "A misunderstanding?" She looked around at the guests who were now openly staring. "The only misunderstanding here is how you think it's acceptable to treat your husband like garbage at my wedding." Her voice was rising. "I've been watching you all day, and frankly, I'm disgusted." My wife's face went white. "You don't understand the situation." "Oh, I understand perfectly, the bride shot back. I understand that you have a good man who came here to support you, and you've spent the entire day humiliating him. She turned to me, and I understand that he deserves so much better than this. The reception had gone almost silent around us. Even the DJ seemed to sense the drama and lowered the music. My wife looked around desperately, realizing that she was now the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. This is supposed to be your day, my wife said weakly to the bride. We shouldn't be causing drama. The bride stepped closer to her. You're right. This is my day. And on my day, I don't want to watch a good man get disrespected by someone who doesn't deserve him. She looked my wife up and down. You want to act single? Go be single. But don't you dare bring that energy to my celebration. I put my hand gently on the bride's arm. Thank you, I said quietly. But this is between me and my wife. The bride nodded. But before walking away, she looked at my wife one more time. You have no idea what you're throwing away, she said. But don't worry. Some of us recognize quality when we see it. As the bride walked back to the head table, my wife turned to me with fury in her eyes. Are you happy now? You've ruined her wedding with your jealousy. I looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. My jealousy? You've got some nerve. I straightened my jacket. But you're right about one thing. The evening is definitely ruined. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The way she was looking at me told me she had no idea what was coming next. But I did, and it was going to be spectacular. The reception continued around us, but the energy had shifted dramatically. My wife retreated to the bathroom, probably to compose herself after being called out by the bride in front of half the wedding guests. I returned to our table, where the other guests suddenly found their dinner plates incredibly interesting. I was finishing my meal when I felt a presence beside me. The bride had left the head table and was standing next to my chair, her expression serious but determined. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Privately. I glanced toward the bathroom where my wife had disappeared 10 minutes ago. Of course. She led me to a quiet corner near the venue's garden entrance, away from the music and chatter. Up close, I could see the stress lines around her eyes despite her perfect makeup. I owe you an apology, she said, surprising me. For what? You defended me back there when you didn't have to. She shook her head. No, I owe you an apology for not saying something sooner. I've watched how she treats you for years, and I've stayed quiet because it wasn't my place. She looked back toward the reception. But tonight, on my wedding day, watching her humiliate you like that, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I studied her face. You've been watching this for years? At every gathering, every party, every dinner we've had together. Her voice was firm. You show up, you're polite to everyone. You help with whatever needs doing, and she acts like you're some burden she has to carry around. She paused. Do you know what you did when you arrived today? I shook my head. You held the door for 3 elderly guests, helped carry chairs for the setup crew, and complimented my mother on her dress. All before the ceremony even started. Her eyes were bright with emotion. My own husband spent that same time complaining about his shoes being uncomfortable and asking when the bar would open. The comparison hung between us like a challenge. That's not really my business, I said carefully. Isn't it? She stepped closer. When I see how a real man behaves, how he treats people with respect and kindness, it becomes very much my business. She gestured toward the reception. Half the women in there have noticed how you carry yourself. The other half are wondering why your wife doesn't see what she has. I felt something shift in the dynamic between us. What are you saying? I'm saying that some people spend their whole lives looking for what you bring to a relationship, and others are too blind to appreciate it when it's right in front of them. She looked directly at me. I made a mistake today. I married someone who takes everything for granted instead of someone who values what matters. The weight of her words settled between us. You just got married 3 hours ago. To the wrong person, she said without hesitation. I realized at the moment I saw how your wife treated you today and how you handled it with more grace than most men would. She touched my arm gently. You deserve someone who sees your worth. I looked back toward the reception, where I could see my wife had returned from the bathroom and was now talking animatedly with the best man again. And what exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that you don't have to tolerate being treated like that. You have options. Her voice was steady. And if you ever decide to explore those options, you should know that some people would consider themselves very fortunate to have your attention. The implication was clear, but I needed to be sure. Are we talking hypothetically here? She smiled, and for the first time all day, it looked completely genuine. We're talking about reality. Your reality, my reality, and the fact that life is too short to spend it with people who don't appreciate what they have. Before I could respond, she continued, I'm going back to the reception now. In about 15 minutes, they'll be doing the traditional toasts from friends and family. She looked at me meaningfully. Anyone can request a microphone if they want to share something heartfelt about marriage or relationships. I felt a slow smile spread across my face as I understood what she was suggesting. That's an interesting tradition, I said. It is, especially when someone has something important to say about recognizing true value in a partner. She started walking back toward the reception, then turned around. Oh, and just so you know, I'll be listening very carefully to every word. I watched her rejoin the celebration, her words echoing in my mind. She'd just given me the perfect opportunity to address the situation publicly with her full support. My wife thought she could humiliate me without consequences, but she'd underestimated two things: my willingness to stand up for myself and the fact that other people had been watching her behavior too. When I returned to the reception, my wife was still at the bar with the best man, their conversation looking even more intimate than before. She saw me approaching and actually rolled her eyes. Where did you disappear to? She asked, though her tone suggested she didn't really care. Having an enlightening conversation about marriage, I replied. About what it means when spouses respect each other. The best man looked uncomfortable and excused himself. My wife turned to me with irritation. Are you going to spend the entire night making passive-aggressive comments? I smiled at her, and something in my expression made her take a step back. Actually, I was thinking about making my comments a bit more direct than that. What's that supposed to mean? I gestured toward the head table where the bride was watching us with obvious interest. It means that sometimes the best way to address a problem is to bring it into the light where everyone can see it clearly. My wife's eyes narrowed. Don't you dare cause a scene. A scene. I laughed. The scene started hours ago when you decided to treat your husband like hired help in front of 200 people. I straightened my tie. I'm just going to make sure everyone understands what they've been watching. The color drained from her face as she realized what I was planning. You wouldn't. I looked at her for a long moment, then walked toward the DJ booth where a small line had formed of people waiting to make toasts. Watch me. As I took my place in line, I could feel the bride's eyes on me from across the room. She raised her champagne glass slightly in my direction, a gesture that looked like encouragement to everyone else, but felt like so much more. My wife had spent the day teaching me exactly how little she valued our marriage. Now it was time for me to teach her what happens when you disrespect a man who's done being quiet about it. The microphone was only 3 people away. The DJ handed me the microphone with a smile. Keep it heartfelt, he said, completely unaware that he was about to witness the most honest speech of the evening. I looked out at the reception hall filled with guests, all turning their attention toward me. My wife stood frozen near the bar, her face pale with the realization that she couldn't stop what was about to happen. The bride sat forward in her chair at the head table, her eyes locked on mine with unmistakable anticipation. Good evening, everyone. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. For those who don't know me, I'm here with my wife as guests of this beautiful bride. I gestured toward the head table, and I have to say, today has been absolutely educational. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. My wife took a step toward me, but I held up my hand to stop her. I've learned so much about marriage today just by observing the people around me. About respect, about partnership, about recognizing value in your spouse. I paused, letting that sink in. It's fascinating how a wedding can really show you what different people think marriage should look like. The room was completely quiet now, sensing that this wasn't going to be a typical toast. For instance, I've observed that some people believe marriage means supporting each other in public, being proud to stand next to your partner, treating them like they matter. I looked directly at my wife. And then there are others who seem to think marriage is more like a performance art piece where you pretend your spouse doesn't exist. Uncomfortable shifting started throughout the audience. My wife's mouth fell open. Now, I don't want to name names, I continued with a slight smile, but I've witnessed some truly remarkable behavior today. Like a wife who can go an entire wedding ceremony without acknowledging her husband's presence. That takes real commitment to indifference. Several guests turned to look at my wife, who was now visibly shaking with anger, or the impressive skill of flirting with every man at the reception except the one you came with. That's advanced level disrespect right there. I raised my glass. But here's what really impressed me today. I turned toward the bride, who was watching with fascination. I've had the privilege of witnessing a bride who understands the difference between a man who deserves respect and one who doesn't. A woman who can recognize character when she sees it. My voice grew stronger, and who isn't afraid to call out behavior that falls short of what marriage should be. The bride's smile was radiant as she raised her own glass. So my toast tonight is to clarity, to the moments when you finally see situations for exactly what they are. I looked back at my wife, who was now trying to push through the crowd toward me, to recognizing when someone shows you their true priorities and believing them the first time. My wife reached the edge of the crowd and shouted, "Stop it. You're humiliating yourself." I turned toward her voice, still holding the microphone. Humiliating myself? That's interesting. I addressed the crowd again. Ladies and gentlemen, my wife just accused me of humiliating myself by speaking honestly about respect in marriage. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Nervous laughter started building throughout the room. But she's absolutely right about one thing. Someone is being humiliated tonight. I paused dramatically. The question is whether it's the man asking for basic respect or the woman who's been publicly demonstrating why she doesn't deserve it. Gasps echoed through the reception hall. My wife's face went from pale to red to pale again. You see, here's what I've learned about marriage today. It's not about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who values what you bring to their life. I looked directly at the bride again. Someone who understands that good men don't come along every day, and when you find one, you treasure him. The bride stood up at the head table, raising her glass higher. To recognizing true value, she called out. Several other guests joined her, raising their glasses. The momentum was building. Exactly, I continued, to recognizing true value, and to having the courage to stop settling for people who take that value for granted. My voice carried across the silent room, because life is too short to spend it with someone who treats your love like an inconvenience. My wife finally broke through the crowd and reached for the microphone. "Give me that." I pulled it away smoothly. "Oh, you want to speak now? How refreshing. You've been ignoring me all day, but now you want my attention." I looked at the crowd with mock surprise. See how that works? Suddenly, I'm worth talking to when there's a microphone involved. The crowd was completely engaged now, some people actually laughing at the brutal honesty of it all. But here's the beautiful thing about respect. I continued, staying just out of her reach. You can't demand it. You earn it. And you can't fake it when 200 people have been watching you treat your spouse like hired help for 6 hours. My wife lunged for the microphone again, desperation clear in her movement. "You're ruining everything." I handed the microphone back to the DJ and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear without amplification. "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just refusing to pretend that being treated like garbage is normal." I looked around the room, and apparently, I'm not the only one who's noticed. The bride stepped down from the head table and walked toward us, her wedding dress flowing behind her like she was walking into battle. When she reached us, she looked directly at my wife. "You know what's ruined?" the bride said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. "Watching a good man get disrespected at my wedding by someone who should be grateful to have him." She turned to me. "And you know what's beautiful? Watching someone finally stand up and demand the respect they deserve." The reception erupted in murmurs and whispers. Some guests were nodding in agreement. Others looked shocked by the drama unfolding before them. My wife looked around desperately, realizing that the room had turned against her. "This is insane. You're all insane." I smiled at her, feeling lighter than I had in years. "No, this is clarity. This is what happens when someone finally stops accepting unacceptable behavior." I straightened my jacket one more time. And this is just the beginning. The look in her eyes told me she was finally starting to understand that her actions had consequences she never saw coming. But it was too late for understanding. The damage was done, the truth was out, and everyone in that room now knew exactly who they were dealing with. The real question was what she planned to do about it. My wife's desperation turned to rage as she realized the entire reception was staring at her with a mixture of judgment and pity. Instead of taking a moment to reflect on her behavior, she doubled down in the worst possible way. "You want to know the truth?" she screamed, her voice cracking with fury. "Fine. The truth is I'm tired of pretending to be happy with someone so boring and predictable." She gestured wildly at me. "You think you're so perfect, but you're just pathetic." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the wedding band had stopped playing. 200 guests watched in stunned silence as she continued her meltdown. All day, people have been telling me how lucky I am, how wonderful you are, how I should appreciate you more. Her laugh was bitter and harsh. But none of you have to live with him. None of you have to pretend that mediocrity is enough. I remained calm, watching her destroy herself with every word. The bride moved closer to me, her expression shifting from shock to something that looked like protective fury. An older gentleman from the groom's family stood up at his table. "Young lady, perhaps you should stop talking before you say something you'll regret even more." "Regret?" My wife spun toward him. "The only thing I regret is not saying this sooner." She turned back to the crowd. "You all think he's so wonderful? Then one of you can have him." That's when the bride's mother stood up, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "In 40 years of marriage, I have never seen such a disgusting display of disrespect." She looked at my wife with pure disdain. "Your husband just gave a beautiful speech about recognizing value, and your response is to prove every single word he said." Other guests began standing, murmuring their agreement. My wife was losing the room completely, but she was too far gone to stop. "You don't understand," she said, tears starting to flow. "I never wanted this marriage to be so ordinary. I thought there would be more excitement, more passion." The bride stepped forward, her voice deadly quiet. "You want passion? Try appreciating what you have before someone else does." She looked my wife up and down. "Because from where I'm standing, you just threw away something precious because you were too shallow to recognize its worth." My wife whirled on the bride. "Oh, please. Like your marriage is going to be any different. In 5 years, you'll be just as bored as I am." The room collectively gasped. Insulting the bride at her own wedding was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The bride's eyes flashed dangerously. "The difference between us is that I know how to recognize a good man when I see one." She moved closer to my wife. "And I know enough not to humiliate him in public while flirting with other men like some desperate teenager." Several of the bride's friends had moved closer, clearly ready to defend her if necessary. My wife seemed to realize she was outnumbered, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "At least I'm honest about what I want," she shot back. "Honest." I finally spoke up, my voice carrying easily across the silent room. "You think what you've displayed today is honesty?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Honesty would have been telling me you weren't happy years ago, so we could address it. This isn't honesty. This is cruelty disguised as truth-telling." The bride nodded emphatically. "Exactly. There's a difference between being honest and being destructive." She looked at my wife with open contempt. "What you're doing is just mean." Other guests began speaking up, their voices creating a chorus of disapproval. "I've never seen anything like this at a wedding," said one woman. "That poor man," whispered another. "How long has he put up with this?" "She should be ashamed of herself," added a third. My wife looked around desperately as she realized the entire room had turned against her. "You're all crazy. You don't know what it's like." The bride's cousin, a woman in her 50s, stood up and addressed my wife directly. "We know exactly what it's like to be married to a good man. The difference is, most of us are grateful for it." The words hit my wife like physical blows. She looked around the room one more time, seeing nothing but disapproving faces and disappointed shakes of the head. "Fine," she said, her voice breaking. "You all think he's so perfect? Keep him." She started walking toward the exit, then turned back one more time. "But don't come crying to me when you realize how boring perfect really is." As she reached the door, the bride called out one final time. "The only boring thing here is watching someone throw away the kind of love most people spend their whole lives looking for." My wife paused at the door, her shoulders sagging as the full weight of what she'd done finally seemed to hit her. But instead of apologizing or trying to salvage the situation, she straightened up and walked out of the reception hall. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Then the bride's mother began clapping slowly, and soon the entire room joined in. They were applauding me, showing their support for how I'd handled the situation. The bride approached me with tears in her eyes. "I am so sorry you had to go through that," she said. "But I'm not sorry that everyone here now knows exactly what kind of man you are." She turned to address the room. "I want everyone here to witness something. This man just showed us all what dignity looks like under pressure. What grace looks like when someone tries to tear you down." Her voice grew stronger. "And what happens when good people finally stop tolerating bad behavior?" The applause grew louder. People were standing now, some of them actually cheering. The bride looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You know what the sad part is?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She had everything right in front of her, and she was too blind to see it. She paused, looking directly into my eyes. But someone else won't make that mistake. The meaning behind her words was crystal clear to everyone in the room. The bride had just publicly declared her interest at her own wedding reception in front of 200 witnesses. I looked around the room at all the supportive faces, at the bride standing beside me like an ally, at the door where my wife had just walked out of my life. For the first time in years, I felt like I knew exactly where I stood, and it was a much better place than where I'd started the day. The reception continued, but everything had changed. Guests approached me throughout the evening, offering support and sharing their own observations about my wife's behavior. It seemed everyone had noticed what I'd been enduring, but nobody had felt it was their place to say anything until tonight. The bride stayed close to me for the rest of the evening, making her position unmistakably clear to everyone present. When the final dance was announced, she approached me directly in front of her new husband. "I have something to say," she announced to the remaining guests, taking the microphone one last time. Today was supposed to be about celebrating love and commitment. Instead, I learned what those words really mean by watching someone demonstrate them under the worst circumstances. She looked directly at me. I watched a man show grace under pressure, dignity in the face of humiliation, and strength when others would have crumbled. That's the kind of person I should have been looking for all along. Her husband finally seemed to realize what was happening, but it was too late. "I'm annulling this marriage," she declared to the stunned crowd, "because I refuse to settle for less when I now know what more looks like." 3 months later, my divorce was finalized. My ex-wife tried to reconcile twice, but I'd learned my lesson about second chances with people who don't value what they have. 9 months after that wedding that changed everything, I proposed to the woman who recognized my worth when it mattered most. The same woman who had the courage to walk away from her mistake and choose better. Our wedding was smaller, more intimate, and filled with people who understood what real love looked like. People who had witnessed both the destruction of a marriage built on disrespect and the beginning of one built on mutual appreciation. My ex-wife wasn't invited, obviously, but I heard through mutual friends that she spent the entire day posting bitter comments on social media about how some people steal other people's happiness. She still didn't understand that you can't steal what was never really there in the first place. The best revenge isn't making someone suffer for treating you badly. It's building such a good life without them that their absence becomes the greatest gift they ever gave you. And that's exactly what happened. My wife had given me the greatest gift of all. She showed me I deserved better and then got out of the way so I could find it.